Part 1. The winter that changed them. The winter came early to Montana that year. Snow covered the plains like a white promise no one had asked for, stretching endlessly beneath a pale sky. The wind moved across the land with a lonely voice, whispering through fences and rattling the old barn doors of Hawthorne Ranch. A place as stubborn and weathered as the man who owned it. Caleb Hawthorne had lived alone for 7 years, 7 winters. 7 summers. 7 years of silence broken only by the sound of hooves, cattle, and the crackle of firewood. Folks in the nearby town of Ridge Creek said he was cold. Some said broken. Others said dangerous. The truth was simpler that he had loved once. And when love left him, it took everything warm with it. Caleb stood on the porch of his ranch house, broad shoulders wrapped in a worn coat, dark hair dusted with snow. His eyes, deep, steady, and tired, watched the horizon like he was waiting for something or someone, though he'd never admit it. Inside the house, the fire burned low. The rooms were clean but empty, like a life paused mid-breath. Then the letter came. It arrived folded and creased, carried by a boy too young to know how much paper could change a man's fate. Caleb read it once. Then again, a widow, seeking honest work and shelter for the winter. Willing to marry if kindness is found. No dowry, no demands. Only a chance. Caleb exhaled slowly, a mail-order bride, that he hadn't gone looking for one. But winter had a way of forcing decisions. The ranch needed a woman's care, someone to tend the house, maybe help with the small things. And deep down, in a place Caleb kept buried, there was a loneliness that no amount of land could fill. He folded the letter and stared into the fire. 1 winter, he muttered. That's all. The woman at the station, the train screamed into Ridge Creek like a wounded animal, steam pouring into the frozen air. Caleb stood near the platform, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. He felt foolish standing there among families and merchants, waiting for a stranger who might not even show. Then he saw her. She stepped down from the train slowly, like the world was heavier for her than for everyone else. She was thin, wrapped in a faded coat too large for her frame. Her gloves were worn, her boots scuffed from long miles. Dark hair fell in loose waves around her face, and when she lifted her eyes, Caleb forgot how to breathe. They were soft, those eyes. Tired, carrying grief like a quiet companion. Not weak, never that, but wounded in a way that spoke of nights cried through alone. This was Elena Moore. She held a small suitcase in one hand, the other clenched tight, as if letting go might undo her. People brushed past her without a second glance. Caleb stepped forward. Elena, he asked, voice low. She turned, startled. For a moment, fear flickered across her face, fear born of too many disappointments. Yes, she said quietly. I'm Caleb Hawthorne. She studied him carefully. He was taller than she expected, rougher, but his eyes weren't cruel. They held a restraint that felt safe. You came, she said. I said I would. That seemed to matter to her more than he realized. The long ride home, they rode in silence at first, the wagon crunching through snow-covered roads. The sky darkened as the sun sank behind the hills. Elena sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap. She didn't look around much, like she was afraid of hoping. You can ask, Caleb said suddenly. She blinked. Ask what? Whatever's sitting heavy on your mind. She hesitated, then shook her head. Not yet. He nodded. He understood that more than she knew. When they reached the ranch, Elena's breath caught. That IT wasn't grand, but it was solid. The house stood strong against the wind, lights glowing warm through the windows. It's beautiful, she whispered. Caleb shrugged. It's home. The word felt strange in his mouth. That a house learning to breathe again. Elena moved through the house quietly that first night, like she didn't want to disturb its memories. She unpacked little, ate little, spoke even less. But the next morning, Caleb woke to the smell of fresh bread. He froze in the hallway. That scent, warm, alive, hadn't existed in this house in years. Elena stood at the table, sleeves rolled up, flour on her fingers. She looked embarrassed when she saw him. I hope it's all right, she said quickly. I didn't mean to overstep. It's fine, he said, throat tight. It's nice. Something shifted then. Small, fragile, but real. The truth between them days passed. Snow fell heavier. Elena worked tirelessly, cleaning, cooking, mending. She never complained, never asked for more. One evening, as the fire crackled low, Caleb finally asked, "Why Ridge Creek?" Elena stared into the flames. "My husband died 3 winters ago," she said softly. "Fever. Took him fast. Took our child with him." Caleb's chest tightened. "I stayed where we were until the house emptied of sound," she continued. "Then I couldn't breathe there anymore." Silence filled the room. Not awkward, but respectful. "I'm not here for love," she added quickly. "I just want peace." Caleb nodded. "I won't force anything." She looked at him then, really looked. "I believe you." The first crack in his walls, it happened during a storm. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and Elena woke from a nightmare. Heart racing, breath trapped in her chest. She found herself standing in the hallway, shaking. Caleb opened his door at the same moment. For a second, they just stared at each other. "It's all right," he said gently, not moving closer. "You're safe here." Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't planned. And for the first time, she nodded and believed it. Caleb didn't touch her that night, but something touched them both, the quiet beginning of trust. And outside, winter tightened its grip, unaware that inside Hawthorne Ranch, two broken souls were slowly learning how to warm each other again. Part 2. The love he didn't know he was ready for. Winter tightened its grip on Red Willow Ranch. Snow climbed higher against the windows, and the world beyond the fences disappeared into white silence. Days blurred together, stitched by routine and something softer neither Luke nor Mary dared name out loud. But the house knew it felt warmer now. Lived in. Alive. When silence turned gentle, Luke noticed the changes first. Mary hummed while she worked, soft, almost shy, like she didn't want the sound to take up space. She left his coat closer to the fire, set aside his favorite mug without asking. She learned his habits without prying into his past. And Luke, without realizing it, began to wait for her presence, for the way she looked up when he entered a room, for the quiet "you're back" in her voice, for the simple fact that someone was there. One evening, as snow fell heavy outside. Luke came in late, cold settled deep in his bones. Mary looked up from the table immediately. "You must be frozen," she said, already rising to watch her move. Steady, purposeful, gentle. "I'm fine," he said, but she still poured in coffee, still set a plate in front of him. And that, more than anything, undid him. The town that judged her, that went into town together for supplies a week later. Mary walked close to Luke, her arm brushing his coat. She didn't cling, but she didn't drift away either. The townsfolk noticed. Whispers followed them. "She's not as kind. She came with nothing. Women like that don't last." Mary heard it. Luke saw the way her shoulders tightened. Outside the general store, one woman spoke too loudly. "She'll leave once the snow melts." "They always do." Luke stopped. The silence that followed was sharp. "She stays because she chooses to," he said evenly. "Same as anyone else." Mary looked at him, surprised, and something like gratitude shone in her eyes. That night, she stood by the window long after dark. "You don't owe me defense," she said quietly. "I know," Luke replied. "I wanted to." That was the moment Mary realized something dangerous. She was falling in love with him. The past that refused to stay buried. The storm came hard and sudden. Wind screamed across the land, shaking the house like it wanted inside. Mary woke, gasping, heart racing, memories crashing down on her. She tried to breathe through it failed. By the time Luke found her, she was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around herself. "Mary," he said softly. She looked up, tears slipping free. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." "You don't have to apologize for hurting," he said. The words broke something open. "I love my husband," she whispered. "And when he died, I thought that meant love was finished with me." Luke sat beside her, not touching, but close. "I thought the same," he admitted, "until you walked into my house." She turned to him slowly. "What if we're just filling the silence?" she asked. Luke met her gaze, steady and sure. "Then why does it feel like coming home?" She leaned into him then, just her shoulder against his arm. And for the first time since their losses, neither felt alone. The kiss that changed everything had happened without planning, without thought. One quiet afternoon, Sunlight broke through the cloud for the first time in weeks. Mary stood near the window, light catching in her hair. Luke stopped short. She looked beautiful, not in a loud way, in a real way. "You're staring," she said softly, a small smile forming. "I know," he replied. She turned toward him, heart pounding. "Luke, what are we doing?" He stepped closer, slow, giving her time to step away. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I know I don't want to lose it." Neither did she. When he kissed her, it was gentle, like a promise rather than a claim. Her breath caught, and she rested her forehead against his chest afterward, trembling. "Is this okay?" he asked. She nodded. More than okay. The choice he had to make spring would come eventually. They both knew at point one evening. Mary spoke the fear she'd been carrying. "When winter ends, will you ask me to leave?" Luke's chest tightened. "I said one winter," he admitted, "because I was afraid to want more." She waited, eyes shining but steady. "And now?" she asked. Luke took her hands, rough fingers warm around hers. "Now I want every season," he said. "If you'll have me." Tears spilled over, but she was smiling. "I've been choosing you since the day I stepped off that train," she whispered. Forever quietly promised. The snow melted slowly. The land softened. And one morning, Luke stood beside Mary under the cottonwood tree where grief once lived. But this time, hope stood there too. He didn't make a grand speech, just held her hands and said, "Stay." She answered with a kiss, and the ranch, once silent, finally learned how to breathe again.